Greetings, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and it is that time of the month again where I review Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. And this month's chapter is 26, These Like-Minded. Now, this chapter cover has Momoshiki flashing his eyeballs, which we haven't seen in a while, his little hand eyes. I speculated a long time ago when Momoshiki was first introduced and Boruto started harboring him with the karma that one day we'll see Boruto be able to use these hand eyeballs and suck jutsu and push out jutsu and whatnot. So it's cool to see that his eyeballs are still present and exists in 2 Blue Vortex. So let's start the chapter. Even though Momoshiki is on the cover, he is not in the chapter whatsoever. So let's go to the next one. So this chapter starts off with Inojin and Himawari. Inojin pulls up to the Uzumaki household where Himawari resides by herself, and he gives her a little present, a little gift. He gives her what it looks like some honey, and Himawari's lit. She likes it. And then we see that Kashin Kojin's little infiltration frog is watching this, and Kashin Kojin uses his frog to talk to Inojin, and Inojin and this Kashin Kojin is going back using his frog, and Kashin Kojin wants to know that Inojin really likes Himawari, and he wants to know that Inojin is willing to do basically whatever to protect her in this sense. So he gets this information really quick, and then he reverse summons him to Boruto and Kashin Kojin's lair, where we learn that there's seemingly no physical exit to this place. So maybe this place is only accessible through reverse summoning, or maybe I'm not sure, but it looks like it's Orochimaru themed, so maybe Orochimaru has something to do with it. I'm not sure, but Inojin gets reverse summoned into the lair. Kashin Kojin sitting there, and Boruto's also sitting here too. Now we go to the Shinju Divine Tree hideout, where we see Jura, Hidan, and Mamushi. I think Hidan's is Sasuke's thing. I think I got his name right. And we see that Jura is learning that Jura is reading more than fact non-fiction books. He reads fiction, and he's able to learn that even with these fictional stories, he's able to pull emotion from these, and he's fascinated by this. And we see that he's getting some emotional by these books. He's crying because he's reading a novel that pulled that emotion out of it. And he mentions how interesting this happened to him, and he makes a direct reference to Matsuri being caught up with Konohamaru's feeling of love and whatnot, because she was on the verge of killing Konohamaru, but she hesitated because she was deeply in love with her. So he was paralleling his feelings with Matsuri, which is very interesting. So we see Mamushi, which is Bug Shinju clone. We see that he's infatuated with, lust, sort of. He's reading this model book with swimsuit model book, and he's talking how he's not interested in love. He's interested in the control aspect of relationships. And this is very cool because we see that all these Shinjus have different motives and whatnot, and his motive is the complete control over Ada and her ability to have crazy genetic powers. He wants her for control. I want to make her superior genetic information mine. So he wants to be able to take her power essentially when he consumes her. So that's his main objective that we see. After this, we jump to Shikamaru, and Shikamaru is dealing with the elders right now. So Shikamaru is getting ready to go talk to the elders about these latest sand mission, their outcome and whatnot. And we see that Kashin Kojin is using Inojin's mind transfer jutsu to communicate to Shikamaru on a different line. So the sensory team isn't able to censor an independent sensory unit transmission to another person. So this is an unofficial transmission that is good to have between them, because Kashin Kojin doesn't need to use his frog to relay information back and forth and whatnot. So this is it's interesting to see that Inojin, out of all people, is getting utilized in the way that he is utilized, because at this point we're just taking hacks at this in two blue vortex, and Inojin's mind transfer transmission jutsu is hacks, because we're able to relay information back and forth secretly, covertly, in this manner. So in this scene, Shikamaru is telling Kashin Kojin about the situation. Kashin Kojin is telling him that the elders are going to look to get you out of the Hokage office at this point. And Shikamaru's like, oh my gosh, like, this is so much stress. Shikamaru's stressed out at this point. He's probably the most stressed person in this whole series so far. I can't believe that he hasn't had a heart attack yet, honestly, because he's like double crossing the leaf, but he's actually trying to help the leaf. But the elders don't know any better other than Boruto's a villain, and they want him executed essentially and killed. So we learned that there's this guy, Lord Kubu or whatever, and he wants to administer an investigation on the mission, where he suspects that Boruto's escape from their custody earlier in Two Blue Vortex was only possible with a inside mold. So the elders realize that Konohamaru is in the scene too, and he's sticking up for Boruto because Boruto saved his life. And then they're like, Konohamaru, Boruto is a criminal and nothing but that, and he killed Lord 7th, the Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki. So he cannot be debated with. And basically the elders and this investigative guy, Lord Kubu, is just trying to find whoever's in cahoots with Boruto so they can protect the leaf, essentially. And in this scene we see that Kashin Kojin is using his Inojin's sensory mind transfer transmission jutsu to be able to communicate with Shikamaru in this important elderly meeting. And he's telling Shikamaru, basically, you need to simmer down and just do your best to, minimize these unjust circumstances that the elders are going to lay upon him. And this scene ends with Konohamaru getting taken by Sai for questioning by Lord Kubu's authority, essentially. And the elders want this as well. And we see that Shikamaru is safe at this time. So he is still currently Hokage, but we don't know for how long his plan how long his ties with Boruto is going to hold up. So after the scene, we shoot back to the hideout where Inojin's talking to Kashin Kojin, and Inojin's like, yo, like, you guys are moving like criminals. You guys are moving devious. You guys are moving without shame, without any rules or regulations. And they're telling him that this is such a dire need for them to move this way that it's necessary to take up these actions, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting philosophy that we see, that, with dire times means dire, consequences, dire actions. So by any means necessary, they're going to get the job done, no matter what technique, no matter what's going to get done. And we see that this is on full display with Boruto and Kashin Kojin's mindset. And we see sort of a butting heads with Boruto and Kashin Kojin in this scene, because Boruto starts to press Kashin Kojin about not telling him who's going to die and whatnot, because Kashin Kojin has prescience. He can see all these possible futures, and he knows the best outcome for whatever. And I've talked about this in the previous chapters, where Boruto isn't the one that's going to just sacrifice X to get Y, but Kashin Kojin is that sometimes X sacrificing X will justify the means. So we're seeing that Kashin Kojin's prescience is giving him a very logical and very heartless, very, approach to these things, and Boruto's administering some heart and some thought and some, empathy over this sort of strategy. And this is just going to be one that's going to be very interesting to play out throughout this series in general, because they're dealing with such a crazy amount of abilities with these prescience, be able to see the future and knowing all these possibilities, but yet what is good may not always be good for the future, and what is bad may sometimes be bad but may produce a good outcome. Is there's a lot of gray in the world, and this is what this series is really getting about. So this ends, and Kashin Kojin informs Shikamaru that Mamushi's going to come in about a week, and he's going to be wanting to get Ada. And Mamushi has abilities that they're going to want to know about. So that's what Kashin Kojin leaves with. This is the end of this scene in the chapter. So now we jump to Ada and Sarada and Sumire and Damon in the makeout house, in their little house or whatever, where they chill. And Ada, like last chapter, she was watching Sumire and Sarada confess their love for Boruto, and she wants to know about this. So they're talking about their love for Boruto, and they basically confess their love to Boruto, which leads Ada to prompt asking them that she isn't captivated by the Sarada and Sumire aren't captivated by Ada because they just confess their love of Boruto. And this goes against Sarada and Sumire's direct orders from Shikamaru, is that if they're found out that Damien is going to be on their butts, because they will be the only people to kill Ada if need be, because Ada's like some... Basically, she goes where her heart goes, and she has the power to do whatever because Damon's on her side, and she has such an ability that is very beneficial to the Leaf. So they want Ada and Damon on their side. But this starts to get shaky because Ada realizes this, and in this realization, Sarada and Sumire foolishly starts to get nervous about Damon's abilities and their cover getting compromised. So for some reason, Sarada chooses to activate her Mangekyo Sharingan, and Damon saves her from doing anything stupid. It's a crazy panel where Damon just grabs her neck, like the manhandles her, like and he's like, whatever you're trying to do, you better not do it, because you die if you launch it. And that's where this chapter ends. Now in this section, I'm gonna quickly give my verdict on this chapter. Now this chapter has a lot of dialogue. It's dialogue heavy, no action, but a lot of furthering of the plot. We see a new character with this Lord Kubu, and him wanting to orchestrate an investigation on this last mission and these procedures that just seemingly just fell through and played into Boruto's hands. So it's going to be interesting to see how that character navigates throughout this series and how long he's able to, you know, keep up this investigation, because now the Leaf and Elders do not even trust the Hokage to do their job correctly. And so we're going to see a sort of civil unjust between, you know, this government. And we see that Inojin's love for Himawari is real and was always sort of hinted at throughout the series, but this sort of puts a stamp of approval on it. And we see that Inojin is going to be playing a big part for the success of Team Kashin Koji and Team Kara at this point. So that's going to be very cool to watch. Very intriguing stuff that I think is going to bolster Inojin as a character, and a lot of, you know, the fan base probably wasn't even expecting Inojin to play such a crucial part in this series up until this point. I wasn't expecting this at all. And then we see Jura and Mamushi's true intentions with control. And then we see sort of a skirmish between Boruto and Kashin Koji, because Kashin Koji is going to do what's best for the future, and what's best for the future might not be what's best for everybody's. So we see Boruto really stand up for himself and his ideals and his belief against Kashin Koji in this manner. And then we finish off with the scene with Ada and Sarada and Sumire talking about their feelings of Boruto, and Ada figuring out that they aren't captivated by her anymore. So we're going to see what happens in the next chapter. Do I think they're going to have a direct fight? No way they fight Damon directly in this. I don't think this is going to be a fight. This better not be a fight, or something spontaneous might need to happen, because it's going to be very bad news if Damon's starting to swap hands with Sumire and Sarada. Maybe Sumire has something up her sleeve that we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen her in any combat form in a while, but maybe I can leave this for the predictions. But out of all, I think this chapter's a 7. I think it pushes a lot of things. It sort of goes over some things that we already know with Sarada and Sumire's love interest, but it gives us a lot to work with. Maybe even an 8, but I'm gonna stick with a solid 7. Let's get right into the so my chapter breakdown, scaling, predictions, whatnot. Final thoughts of this chapter is, man, what is gonna happen? I just got a thought during the verdict, is that what if Sumire has some sort of ace up her sleeve, thanks to, who's the scientist guy? The scientist guy who made all the cyborgs? I can't think of his name. But maybe she's able to have some type of imagine if she has a shutdown code for Damon and Ada if things were to go crazy. That would be insane, because I don't see how Sarada wins a fight against Damon or Ada at all, because this fight doesn't need to be a fight whatsoever. If it is, then they're cooked. But if Sumire has something up her sleeve, we haven't seen her do anything in so long. I think this is a perfect time for her to do something, for her to stand on business, because Sumire's been sidelined for too long, and it's time to see what she has up her sleeves, what she's been cooking with the science, branch. Now let's go back to the beginning of this chapter with Inojin and Kashin Koji. How often will Kashin Koji and Inojin be able to collaborate? Will people start to see that Inojin and Boruto are working together? Are they going to find this out somehow? This will be something that's going to be bad news for Team Kara, Team Undercover Kara, because if this investigation starts to draw Inojin in it, will Inojin be a rogue ninja? Will Shikamaru be a rogue ninja or something? Who's gonna be Hokage next if Shikamaru gets his reins taken from him? Very interesting stuff. And we see that Mamushi is gonna get ready to come and do some damage to Ada or to the Leaf. And we see that we don't get it in this chapter, but there's something with Mamushi's abilities that they have to know, because Kashin Kojin's telling Shikamaru about his abilities. So will Mamushi have one of the most utility in his toolbox? I think this was sort of hinted at, because I watched this one YouTuber, Mello, and he was predicting that Mamushi is going to be one of the more dangerous Shinju out of them all, which we know that Jura's the top dog. Maybe Mamushi is the second type guy, but it's going to be interesting to see what conspires there. So this chapter, this chapter was a fun chapter to read and to get all the abilities and see Inojin's resolve, Kashin Kojin and Boruto's sort of plan and how they're going to orchestrate things. Boruto did mention in this chapter how he was going to strike a deal with Momoshiki, and we don't know what that deal was. Well, we know what that deal was from last chapter. He was going to sort of trade his life, trade some of his time to get some type of power from Momoshiki. So he was on the cover of this chapter, so we know he's going to play a very big role upcoming, and we don't know how. Maybe Mamushi's going to be crazy and Boruto's going to need Momoshiki's power. But we'll see. This chapter raises a lot of questions than it does really answers, and I'm excited to see what they do next.